There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated.
Honourable members on the virtual platform, this is Tanya Lyons from the NA table. We seem to have lost our link with the chamber. We're trying to restore it. Hopefully we will be linked again shortly.
Thank you, Tanya. Okay, Tanya, please let them know that you are disconnected.
Yes, please, can it be stopped there?
Yes, ma'am, I have done so. I have done so already.
No.
I'm just waiting to check.
So we have been suspended from the house.
We can hear now. I can hear Chief Whip of the ANC now.
Is it so?
But we cannot see them.
I hope it's not the men that is sabotaging this.
What sabotage? Or bad.
Here we go.
Finally.
Hello. Yeah, I haven't forgotten. I'll do it just now. Okay. I'm in Parliament.
Order. Honorable members, I now call Honorable Sheriff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This past weekend, the Uyenene Retiana Foundation held a commemorative protest to mark 2 years since the tragic and absolute brutal murder of Uyenene. The foundation had sent out postcards across the country for women and girls to write their experiences. Out of the 12,000 responses, here are some. And I quote, "One day, my child's father chased me with a hammer. I fell and he hit me on my back. While I was giving my statement, the police told me, 'You're not dead, so relax till morning,'" close quote. This is the response women are given when they report violence. Minister Becky Cele, how do you sleep at night, knowing that this type of service and the institution you are leading, I keep saying the SAPS remain the weakest link in the chain to fight GBVF. A grade 1 learner wrote, open quote, "Women are strong. My mom works and I want her to be safe on a taxi," close quote. A child in grade 1 is about 7 years old, and they are already aware of the dangers women face. Minister Mashabane, wherever you are, 7-year-olds are being raised in a society where they fear for their mother's life and hopes she comes home safely every day. But yet, you lead a department that is literally doing nothing to change this. You, Minister, are the head of incompetency and you must change it. A grade 10 learner wrote, and I open quote, I want everyone to feel safe. The stark reality, Honorable Chief Whip of the Opposition, is that women and girls are not safe under the current dispensation. And the prospects of a safe society seems to be slipping out of our hands every day, every week, month and year that goes by with the slow implementation of the NSP. South African women and girls do not deserve such contempt from those who lead them. We deserve so much better. A woman wrote, and I quote, what have we done as women to receive such silent treatment from the one body that is supposed to be protecting us? What have we done as women that even our very own women in parliament do not feel the pain, our pain as women are abused and killed every day, close quote. I am here to tell you that we do feel your pain because your pain is our pain. And even though it sometimes feels like there is no one in your corner, know that there are women in this house doing everything they can to hold those who use GBV as a political tool to account without fear and without favor. The last postcard I read was, open quote, I do not want to die with my arms up and my legs open, close quote. If this does not sum up the lived experiences of women and girls in this country, I do not know what does. Women in South Africa are indeed dying with their arms strapped behind them and their legs open. Women continue to die every single day. They are being chopped, slaughtered, maimed, and ripped apart. Girlfriends and wives are beat down, dragged by their hair, and used like worn-out punching bags. Girls are being raped every day and taken advantage of by older men. A 10-year-old child knows nothing of consent. This is pedophilia, and we should all be disgusted. Mark my warning, honorable members. If we do not start seriously taking stock of the reality, we will be back here speaking about the same issues with no end in sight. We have to do better, not for ourselves, but for those who come after us and that grade 1 learner who wants his mom to be safe. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The next speaker is Honorable Sitwai, and Honorable Sitwai will be on the virtual platform. Honorable Sitwai.
I'm here, Honorable Speaker. My apology for the network, but I managed to be here. Honorable Speaker, somlomo obelekileyo walendlu yomthetho usabhokhwe nesekela lakhe izichophi zalendlu zonke wezibakala zazo ibalule ngqongqoshe abalapha ibalule namalungu omama notata nabafana abachophela ikomiti eziphonononga inkqubo yalendlu yomthetho yabhotisa ngale njikalanga ndithi molweni Nithani molo 2021 resembles a historic year in South Africa's diary and worldwide, where the ruling party resolved that igama lamakhosikazi malibongwe to unity, renewal, and inclusive socio-economic transformative integrated development. And igama lolo nkosikazi libekwe phezulu eligqatsiweyo umama uCharlotte Maxeke, intombi yaseBringswaters eMathole e-Eastern Cape. Siyabulela upresidenti othe xa esikelela lo nyaka wayonyathela kanye kwezo ndawo kusuka lo nkokheli umama uCharlotte intombi kaDani. uDani ke ngunolongo apha ezindleleni ebetha amatye ukubheka pha eBloemfontein ukubheka pha eKimberley. Le ntombi ke yahlamba ifadukwe pha emanywabeni ke pha eXesi yatshata notata uMashali uMaxeke yona ingumanye isiduko sayo, the first black BSc degree graduate. Chair, it is important that today's parliament debate is put in a particular political and environmental context, which will ensure that the ANC road that have been well traveled towards a democratic state is well established. And the ANC fought against apartheid state, which was a social mechanism for the promotion and defense of a system of white minority domination, enrichment and super exploitation of the black majority. The democratic government is tasked with 130 years inequalities for them to change. Allow me, Madam Speaker, to present a leading light by some powerful leaders who establish a landmark towards a legacy of freedom, which is a human dignity, a human tradition of the African National Congress. Thina singabafazi, singomama bazalele ekhaya, sisebenza ekitchen, singomama bangazalanga, sinabantwana, singama-Afrika, singamandiya, singabantu bebala, singamakhaladi. Sithi namhlanje kuWest Region, our aim is for the striving for the removal of all laws, regulations, conventions, and customs that discriminate against us as women and that deprive us in any way, in many ways, of our inherent right to the advantages, responsibilities, and opportunities that society offers to any one section of the population. As women, we do not form a society separate from the men. There's only one society, and it is made up of both women and men. We do share problems and anxieties of our men and join hands with them to remove social evils and obstacles to progress. Out of vast skill of umama uCharlotte, I want to highlight just few that if she was still alive, where we are today, are we managing the issues that she theoretically talked about for a democratic state? Charlotte was not a hard political radical figure, but a revolutionary social activist and a Christian, and Christianity remained her guiding force of life. It is critical that today we ponder and reflect on her intellectual trajectory within the present gender politics and power in the liberation movement. With all its shortcomings. Concerning today's gender politics, we are here and we know we should speak practical issues and be able to present what is practical. Charlotte was not a speaking person, she was a practical person. She speaks soft, she does things, she makes things to happen. That is why the president of the ANC, Alfred Tupitini, was said, Ati, I have seen a unique character on this particular woman. And then he wrote a book that he said, what an African girl can do. In an understanding of ills of colonialism, which involved not only the establishment of political control and economic dominance, but also the importation of Western ideas. Indwendwe zafika zahlala, safika sakopa into zazo, ezindwendwe zasityhiliza, saphuma ngaphandle. Charlotte had no racial boundaries and had no limitations on strategic chances that are inhumane, that indignifies women and humanhood. During the process to mobilize support against proposal to extend passes to women across, she had no time. This industrial Matleke wasted no time. She immediately confronted Prime Minister Uluwi Botha to exclude women from the night passes. She then identifies a huge weakness in terms of the children's rights. The observation of children in urban cities, which were becoming social threats. A child welfare committee was established in 1935 and to be overseen by her for the better performance towards transformation agenda. And all of what has happened, many areas had to have this committee to address the issues of young people, young children. Her concern of a family unit as a building block for good, prosperous society. A child is a criminal at 18 years, involved in GBV. Police must come, justice system must come. You ask yourself, a child of 18 years, how does it happen that he became a criminal? Where was the mentor? Where was the role models? Where were the teachers of that child? Now it should be government must come now. Justice system must come now.
Honorable Member, time is up. Thank you.
I want to make a quote on the conference that was asked by the European Union. Circulate your work and distribute as much.
Next speaker. The next speaker will be Honorable Honorable Mente.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, today we are talking about women and the economy. When the women of 1956 shook off the yoke of fear for persecution from the apartheid government and confronted oppressive laws, they did so fully conscious of the intersectional nature of the struggles faced by women in this country. They were aware that they were oppressed because they were Black. They were exploited because they were workers, and they were abused and humiliated because they were women. This combination makes the struggle of African women in particular very peculiar in this country, because not only must they still face an inherently racist and exploitative system, they also need to face a toxic patriarchal society and abuse, molestation, and even murder at home. Underlying these challenges faced by women is an innate, incapable, corrupt, and alarmingly directionless state. This makes the state as it is currently constituted an enabler of all these ills faced by women in this society. Just recently, Statistics South Africa released quarterly labor force survey of the second quarter of 2021, reporting that unemployment rate in the country has risen to over 34%. The picture is even more horrifying for women, however. Stats SA report that women are more likely to be unemployed than men, and for those employed, they are likely to be paid far less than men. That's the state which is perpetuated by our government today. The rate of unemployment amongst women was 36.8% in the second quarter of 2021 compared to 32% amongst men, according to the official definition of unemployment. The unemployment rate amongst Black African women is 41% during this period, compared to the 8.2% of white women. 22.4% among Asian women and 29% among colored women. Black Africans remain at 41%. According to the expanded definition of the rate of unemployment among women at 48.7% was 81% percentage points higher than amongst their male counterparts in the second quarter of 2021. Of those in managerial positions, 66.9 were men compared to only 33% that were women. Those managing the affairs of the country on behalf of capital have thoroughly failed the women of this country. We are battered from all sides, prevented from playing the meaningful role in the economy of this country, and molested and murdered at home and on the streets of this country. The United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, to which we are a signatory and ratified, released a report in May this year, which investigated the extent of domestic violence against women in South Africa. The report acknowledged that the political and socio-economic structures and system in this country are provide of the fertile ground for the escalation of violence against women. It has acknowledged that the police and the judiciary lack the requisite training and skill to deal decisively with cases of gender-based violence. This is particularly because the case when they're dealing with cases of abduction of girls and women for marriage, the case of child enforced marriages and outdated traditional beliefs, which lead to instances where women are even denied rights to own land in traditionally administered areas, that still exist in this democratic dispensation. The state is as yet to respond to any of these recommendations made by the convention in terms of legislative reforms and in terms of building the capacity of the institutions of criminal justice. None of the ministers nor MECs have actioned any of the recommendation by the SAPO. That was evident in their responses just recently in the Women's Parliament. None of them have bothered to even respond to what SAPO has made as a recommendation. We have always been resolute that the struggle for the total emancipation of women needs to deal comprehensively with the intersectional factors hindering women emancipation. We need to be forceful in fighting for the recognition of the work done by women in the economy and forcefully fight for the employment of women into position of authority within the state and in the private sector. Women must be paid equally for the work they do. Banyana players must be paid equally to Bafana players. Women-owned businesses must be supported without having men in position of authority demanding sexual favors. Perpetrators of heinous crimes against women must be severely punished. The police and the judiciary must be trained to deal with cases of violence against women accordingly. The NCOP must fast-track the passing of the gender-based violence bills in order to tighten the legislative instruments advancing the protection of women. Unfortunately, we are not shocked that the ANC government has not concluded the redress of women it has tortured following the Commission for Gender Equality report February 2020 on the forced sterilization of Black women by the ANC government. The delay tactics and lack of agency recently displayed by the Department of Health expose the hatred of the ANC government against women and will not be tolerated. And this is perpetuated by the chairperson of the ministerial committee, who is also a woman. We are equally not shocked that today EFF has received yet 21 more cases of women who were forcefully sterilized because doctors do it with impunity. Women across the sectors of society must know that they have a home in the EFF and we will fight for them with everything we have. Thank you very much.
Point of order, your time is up, please. No, honorable members, let's not do that.
Madam
Honestly, you went over your time, way above it. I tried to stop you, honorable member, please. Yes, honorable Mazon.
For you to remove your mask when you speak because you're at a safe distance. And may I ask that people respect your ruling and that the table staff assist you by simply turning the member off. because it is not your sole responsibility, it is the responsibility of all the table staff to assist you too. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank you, Madam Speaker, for being courteous enough to keep your mask on to keep us safe, but you also have a job to do, which we understand.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mazon, and thank you. You've liberated me. Thank you, honorable members. Honorable members, when I say your time is up, your time is up, please. And I think the table officers, you failed me this time because I tried to mute and stop the member and I could not, so you must do it. Thank you very much. I now invite Honorable Shengwa on a virtual platform to make his statement.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, we are advancing gender equality through inclusive economic growth and research and capable development plan. That is a song. The strategy reality is that the socio-economic and financial impact brought on by the pandemic had a much greater impact on women. The majority of frontline workers are women, and women find themselves in much less secured employment.
Mam Sengwa, Usasakhona, is she still there? Is she still there? Oh, she has muted herself. Mam Sengwa, i-mic yakho ivuliwe, angazi kune mhlambe problem ye-network awusakwazi ukuchubeka because asikuzwa, kodwa i-mic ivulekile.
Honorable Chairperson, it's Singh here. It seems she is having connectivity problems. May I?
Lost her.
Yes. May I start with her speech from the beginning?
Where she ended, please.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. We must ask ourselves honestly today, is government doing enough, or is it simply paying lip service to gender equality during Women's Month? We cannot talk about advancing an inclusive economy and gender equality while our current policies make it nearly impossible for women who are small business owners to access financial assistance, in particular COVID-19 relief funding. We know that small and medium business enterprises are the beating heart of our economy. According to a report published by Statistics South Africa in December 2020, small businesses have, remarkably, been increasing their role in the formal business sector. In 2013, small businesses generated 16% of the total turnover in the formal business sector in South Africa. And by 2019, in less than 6 years, this increased to 22%. Government says it is committed to assisting small business enterprises, and many promises have been made. The National Development Plan emphasizes that there is a need to support small businesses, encourage government and the private sector to procure from small firms, and to enhance the development of Black and female managers and professionals, close quote. However, do we see any of these promises being fulfilled? In December 2020, the Minister of Small Business Development introduced the National Small Business Enterprises Amendment Bill. But since then, there have been no further developments. This bill aims to improve access to justice for small businesses. So again, we see little actual delivery on promises being made. The government can publish policy documents on assisting small business enterprises and design tools to reach women business owners. But the only true measurement is in performance, in that our government has failed women business owners miserably. In conclusion, let us put the facts on record. According to a report in partnership with the Department of Small Business Development, 42% of small businesses closed down. First 5 months of lockdown, 47% made funding requests. More than 60% received no response. And Madam Chairperson, I'm speaking about this because this is the topic today. Women and small businesses and what is government doing to contribute. Not about gender-based violence or anything else. So we say the IFP to its core believes in self-reliance, in building small businesses that can generate income and employment opportunities. It is time for government to step up and fulfill their promises to grow an inclusive society of which women must be an integral part of. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Baie dankie, agbare lid Jenna, dis u se geleentheid nou.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. Honourable House Chair, a developmental state aims to meet the needs of the people. But what are the needs of the people, and specifically women in South Africa? They need to be able to provide for their families, to earn a living through gainful employment, and be able to invest, save, and take part in an economy that enables them to do all of the above. Excuse me. They need to feel safe in their own homes, in their workplaces, and in the spaces between. They need to be able to trust those appointed to serve and protect them, be able to access quality healthcare, and they need delivery. All these needs that a so-called dedicated, capable, ethical, and developmental state should meet. Needs that are not being met by a government that places party interest above the interest of the people. Unemployment, Honourable House Chair, has risen to an all-time high of 44.4%, including the most worrying 3.4 million discouraged work seekers. Black women are the worst off, with an unemployment rate of 41%. Their needs are not being met. Youth unemployment among those in the age group of 15 to 24 years is 64.4%. 3.3 million of these youths are not in any form of training or education. Their needs are not being met. Amidst this unemployment crisis, jobs are lost daily due to government failures. The Clover factory in Lichtenburg in the northwest that provided 300 jobs to the surrounding community is in the process of closing down due to ongoing poor service delivery received from the local municipality. Was this employment creator and those dependent on these jobs, many of whom are women's needs, met by the state? No, Honourable House Chair. Wat veiligheid betref, agbare voorsitter, die afgelope Vrydag het ons die jaarlikse vroueparlement in hierdie huis gehad, die derde een sedert die aanvang van die 6de parlementêre termyn. My kollega Tammy Breed het gedurende haar toespraak Vrydag die effektiwiteit, nut en waarde van die vroueparlement en in effek die staat perfek opgesom deur nuusopskrifte aantal. Nuusopskrifte in die week na die 2019 vroueparlement het gelei 14-jarige meisie verkrag en vermoor in ouma se agterplaas. Poskantoorwerker bieg oor Oyenene se moord. 2020 opskrifte sluit in swanger vrou wreed vermoor tydens plaasaanval. Vrystaatse ouma van 91 verkrag en vermoor. Swanger vrou aan boom opgehang. En 2021 gaan voort met Gugulethu vrou wreed vermoor. Man verkrag en vermoor tiener weens woede oor vrou. Minnaar erken dat hy student van Fort Hare vermoor en die lys hou net nooit op nie. Can women feel safe and secure in their own homes, in their workplaces and in the spaces between if a woman is murdered every 3 hours in South Africa? Has anything changed since the protests in front of this very parliament in 2019? Are our needs for safety and security met if we as women have to look over our shoulder every minute of every day in this country? No, Honourable House Chair, they are not. None of our needs are being met. And the fact that the ANC has the audacity to say in this House that they are advancing gender equality through inclusive economic growth and the precept of a capable and developmental state in the face of such overwhelming evidence to the contrary is a slap in the face of every South African, especially women and youth. You have failed us, ANC. Like your money troubles, you cannot hide these failures anymore either. We see you and we will hold you accountable. I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you. Agbare Soekers.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. As Women's Month come to a close today, it is evident we can no longer continue on the trajectory that we are on as a nation. Our country, South Africa, has been blessed with exceptional women leaders who left behind a legacy of how to lead with conviction and compassion in pursuit of justice. The example of Marshalet Matleke has long been abandoned by the political leadership of our country. To live a life of self-abandonment is not the political culture of our day. Self-enrichment we know all too well, but no moral and effective leadership that captures the heart of our people. To rule by winning the heart and minds of our people takes much more than a food parcel and t-shirt. Our nation is staggering under the weight of our collective failures to assume responsibility, not for colored women, black women, or white women, but for all women. Lydia Ross died in December last year of COVID-19. She was a woman of great character who waited on housing for over 30 years. Chairperson, she died without receiving the house that she was promised with each and every election cycle. She was a mother and a grandmother who worked for most of her adult life, yet she died without a pension and still waited on her unemployment benefits to be paid out to her, almost a year after having applied for it. Farana's farmer mentor, 32 years of age, a mother of 3, murdered in broad daylight in a Wendy house by a repeat violent offender who was out on bail. Chairperson, both women I have mentioned lost their lives, never owned a home. The ACDP has repeatedly called for accelerated housing initiatives for vulnerable women and their children. We also want these initiatives to provide a degree of integrated social upliftment and economic advancement. A very disturbing report by Viewfinder provides a horrific picture of abuse by police against women who seek help. The report covers over 1,000 cases since 2012, with at least a third of the cases registered with IPID happening while police were on duty at the times these crimes were committed. Most of these cases went unpunished and never saw any conviction or court appearances. We have a culture of rampant abuse against women that allows for the worst of crimes to go without punishment and seemingly no remedy to cure it. It prevails because we are unwilling to address the root causes of societal issues and unresponsive systems. A sluggish and ineffective state perpetuates and undermines the aims of women empowerment and advancement. Women leaders in this house must lead the way to transform the public service. There has never been a greater need than there is today for strong moral leadership in the vacuum that exists. Chairperson, it must be our purpose.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sukers. The monitor on your left-hand side, once it turns red, it says something else.
Thank you.
Just a reminder.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We proceed and call on the Honorable, the General Holomiso.
Mhlali ngaphambili namalungu abebekileyo alendlu yalowiso umthetho. Bomama boMzantsi Afrika namantokazi masithethe inyani apha. Ubutyebi belo Mzantsi Afrika namathuba engqesho kwakunye nawo ba umuntu avula ibhizinesi athande ukuba only again afumane ukhuselo umbutho othile uba ngaba ulolungu apho abantu abatholile. Even nalento extended public works le kuthiwa ngocambalala into ebuhlungu fumana sibaphaya xa uqesha abantu kuthiwe umuntu makaze nekhadi lombutho othile kanti le nkululeko yayeyobani xa ngaba kunodeske udiscriminate against nabantu abaphuwa abangenanto atyuwisha imini yonke pha ekugqibeleni kuthiwa hayi asiqeshwanga thina because kuthiwa asikho kulo mbutho uthile. We need to depoliticize le ndaba yokuthi abantu abangoomama amathuba abo angayanjani na ukuze nabo baxhamle ebutyebini belizwe. Iyafana nengqesho whether uthetha ngee-DGs uthetha ngee-chief directors abo bantu abo badlula phi bawudlula kwi-deployment policy yombutho olawulayo. Uba ngaba ubhilonge kulo mbutho masingaxokisa abantu apha. Idlule ndiye kulo mcimbi woba wamadoda abulala omama I think le constitution yethu sinayo eMzantsi Afrika le ethi ithetha nge-right to life make siyifundisise siyijolike kakuhle yena lothi athathe ubomi bomnye umuntu ithini i-constitution imkhusela njani lo
Who is he protected after taking the life of another person? That we should have a debate on that. Otherwise, this is going to kill the whole of us. Those who are talking about Mother Charlotte Maxeke, people, you are in power now. We agree. Just to be brief on the reference when you talk about, to the people of South Africa, tell us what is happening now, what you are going to do tomorrow. Because Charlotte Maxeke and Mother Sisulu, obviously, they will not tolerate what is happening today, this embezzlement of the funds, the monies that should to be directed to the people. We should not play gamble about our people. There's a lot in your program. We need a program to be unfold. The program should assist the women and young professionals who need to be told when they want to apply, and once they tender, they are told that they should belong to a particular organization to get things right. That should come to an end. Thank you.
Anginalo igama ka-ATM, ukhona ozokhuluma?
Is there
I
any
don't have
speaker
any
for the
name for the
ATM?
ATM. Is
I
there
don't have a
anybody
name
assigned to
here.
speak on behalf of the ATM?
Good.
Honorable Chair, at the last parliamentary sitting dated 28 August 2020, the Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces called for an urgent program of action from three arms of state to bring an end to gender-based violence and femicide in our country. Soon will be the end of Women's Month, and November will signal 16 days of activism against women and child abuse. If we are to be honest, nothing has changed. In fact, this would have progressively gotten worse. We have witnessed the increase in crimes against women and children in our society, but more so in our places of learning, unemployment, and institutions where these victims are deemed to be safe. Failing to protect women and children has long-lasting consequences for their growth and ability to pursue a prosperous existence in society. If we are to address the generational equality, we must address the cause of these offences. It is for this reason that Good endorses and believes in the basic income grant so that we can move away from the scourge and assist our families to uplift themselves. Chair, taking this into consideration, South Africans are sick and tired of killing and brutal dismemberment of women and girls in this country. Wearing black at the unnecessary loss of life is not enough. We need calculated, focused, and results-driven interventions. It is therefore that I call for an amendment to the Criminal Law Amendment Act 105 of 1997 on minimum sentence legislation and an amendment to Schedule 2, Part 1, in that we must add femicide as a compulsory life sentence crime. The status quo and the current punishment is not a deterrent. There is no regard for human life. There is no regard for the women who gave life. Tata Madiba said, freedom cannot be achieved unless the women have been emancipated from all forms of oppression. Women remain enslaved to this system of patriarchy and violence. No bail for these suspects, these culprits needs to be evicted from our society. May these fallen angels rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable August. Furniture, SABC.
Honorable SABC.
Can I take this? He's having some difficulty with technology.
Proceed, Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. Allow me to start off by paying tribute to Babita Deokaran, gunned down mercilessly by all male assassins while fighting corruption in a male-dominated industry, a corruption industry. Honorable Chairperson, we have NGOs in this country, NPOs, CPFs, neighborhood watches, law enforcement that includes metro police, SAP, security industry, tons of legislation, and we need no more. Billions of rands are spent annually, but 112 women are still raped daily. 42 of them raped by those that they are known to. Now, year in and year out, Chairperson, we make this call for women to be protected, recognized, respected, and treated equally. I don't think it is time for more legislation. I think it calls for societal change. There must be something wrong, and we need to get to the root causes of what is going on. 13% of women in this country, only 13%, a meager 13% hold executive positions. If you take the Western Cape, for example, they make up more than the colored community makes up for more than 52, 53% of the population, but only 8% of them hold managerial positions. Let's look at the issue of women with disability. Let's start from this house. How many women with physically challenged women do you have in the 400 number of members in the National Assembly for start? Now, when a woman is raped or murdered, we find that this thing becomes politicized. In front of the courts, people got these placards and things. But what have we done, Chairperson, to protect this woman, to prevent them from being raped and to prevent them from being murdered? Very little or nothing is being done in terms of it. Let me pay tribute to people like, Mama Winnie Mandela, the role that she played even in the release of Madiba. Let me pay tribute to Zanele Magwaza Msibi. What a fantastic woman. And look at how she selflessly served the interest of the women and children in the area where she'd been a mayor for over 14 years. So for women to take their rightful place in society, we need to start at home. How many men in their own homes recognize women equally and respect them? Where do we get this that men, believe that they are superior to women? Every woman out there is somebody's child, somebody's sister, somebody's daughter, somebody's mother. When can we understand them? Now, I also want to say that as parents, we need to take responsibilities if we want to create a better society of people in the future. And that is where our problem is. We need to get to the root causes of what is happening in the country currently. Why do women continue to earn less than their male counterparts? Okay. In other words, it's another form of apartheid. Before, whites would earn more than in the non-whites. Now it means that women are earning less.
Honorable Sheikh Imam, your time is up.
Thank you.
I know it's been a long time since these sittings have been taking place. Let's please go back and plan accordingly with our allocated time. Rempiti?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. In the month of April, my colleagues and I, Honorable Sharif and Honorable Nobo, traveled across the country visiting Tutuzela care centers, meeting the frontline workers who deal directly with gender-based violence each and every day. The social workers, the counselors, the nurses, the psychologists, and the volunteers. Honorable Speaker, it was extremely difficult to hear the stories of fatigue, burnout, and worry that many felt. These are the people who have to contend with what to do if the police don't bring rape kits on time. These are the people who have to contend with having no vehicles to make it to the most remote parts of our country to get to victims. These are the people who have to contend with the constant rhetoric, the pontification that happens in this house, the politicization of gender-based violence that happens consistently, and the continued pretentiousness and the promises that are made at this podium every year. They asked us to deliver a message that instead of speeches of how we sympathize, instead of politicizing this crisis each and every year, they asked us to tell this house to be bold in our action, be bold for the victims, be bold for all those we've lost. The point is, it is about the people in charge, the people who decide what the priorities become, the people who control the resources, and many of those people are in this house. Our country is currently gripped by the scourge of gender-based violence. One cannot try to analyze this particular violence without looking at the root causes. Gender-based violence is an establishment that strives in an environment of no accountability, no justice, no service delivery, entrenched patronage, and a completely lack of will. Today, many women are watching this debate from home, school, the workplace. I'm worried because I'm not sure whether this government will change anything. It didn't last year, and it didn't the year before that. The government knows what it needs to do. They've heard it time and time again every year in this very house. They've heard it from NGOs, they've heard it from women, they've heard it from many people in this country, but nothing has changed. But what we can change is what we do as men. Not by only caring deeply about these issues, because it is not enough. We need to have more guts to challenge each other, to disrupt each other, and begin to change the level of tragedy in our society. This is one of the ways we stop dominant systems from maintaining themselves, to stop the trajectory of going unexamined about issues that are about us. Now more than ever, we need to stand our ground and fight for the future of South Africa. Because it is clear if we lose the fight against gender-based violence, we lose the future of South Africa. So we have to do it. Be bold for all the women we've lost, for the men and women who never had the opportunity to share their stories, for our parents who grew up in spite of all these things, for them who knew that they had to laugh and dance despite the fact that they were silenced, that their abuse was silenced, for those who have lost hope, for the parents who have lost their daughters, for the children who have lost their mothers. We have to be bold and stop gender-based violence in this country. I thank you.
Ra leboga, Tate Mphithi. Ra Letsie. Letsie ntate.
Mr. Litsia.
House Chairperson and fellow South Africans. The DAF, as we have heard, the EFF, the Freedom Front Plus, ACDP, surprisingly today, once again misses the point by politicizing a very serious and sensitive pandemic. Continues to claim lives and dignity for women and children. Shame on you. As we close off Women's Month, I wish to take a moment to reflect.
Very much disappointing.
Which was adopted at the founding conference of the Federation of South African Women, the Women of South Africa, from all walks of life, boldly declared, open quote, we resolve to struggle for the removal of laws and customs that deny African women the right to own, to inherit, alienate, poverty. We resolve to work for a change in the laws of marriage, such as are found amongst our African, Malay, and Indian people, which have the effect of placing wives in the position of legal subjection to husbands and giving husbands the power to dispose of wives' property and earnings and dictate to them in all matters affecting them and their children. We recognize that the women are treated as minors by these marriage and property laws because of ancient and revered traditions and customs which had their own origin in the antiquity of the people and no doubt served the purpose of great value in bygone times, close quote. Throughout history, women have been marginalized, regarded as the weaker gender, and incapable of fulfilling the duties which were traditionally considered as being for men. History teaches us that women in most parts of the world, including South Africa, were considered perpetual minors without rights to property, to inherit, to vote, to hold legal power, and to hold certain occupations. Married women were legally dead in the eyes of the law. History teaches us that women were relegated to the lower ranks of society. Throughout all of this, history also teaches us that the bodies of women have been considered and treated as object. The war against women's bodies continues even today. Patriarchy remains deeply entrenched within the fabric of our society and continues to serve as a catalyst to breed and legitimize most violations and discriminations against women. It is therefore imperative that we challenge and dismantle patriarchal attitude. The fight against patriarchy is not just a woman's struggle. It is my struggle, it is your struggle, it's everybody's struggles. While there has been great progress in the emancipation of women in South Africa through legislative and other means since the advent of democracy, women remain disproportionately represented amongst the country's poorest. The gender gap continues to persist in economic, social, and political spheres. Economic empowerment remains the most important contributing factor to achieving gender equality, unleashing the entrepreneurial potential of women, which drives growth through innovation, education, training, and job creation, continue to be some of the most effective ways to ensure lasting empowerment. The economic empowerment of women is a prerequisite for reducing poverty in our country and dismantling patriarchy. It is our collective responsibility to change the social construct of patriarchy. Chairperson, the 54th National Congress of the ANC further resolved earlier that the full might of the criminal justice system, including the denial of bail and sentence regime, should be utilized in combating of violence against women and children, particularly in relation to the domestic violence and sexual offenses. The ANC, in its 2019 election manifesto, committed itself to eradicating gender-based violence. Following the presidential summit in 2020, 3 bills, which are commonly known as the 3 GBV bills, were tabled before the Portfolio Committee of Justice and Correctional Services, and the public was invited to make submissions. These bills were passed in this House this year, and they are now referred to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. These 3 bills, just to refresh your memories, they are the Criminal and Related Matters Bill, which seeks to, amongst others, introduce stricter bail and sentencing provision, alive to the fact that a child witness must be protected from undue mental stress or suffering while giving evidence. The bill seeks to provide the appointment of intermediaries and regulate the giving of evidence through intermediaries in proceedings other than criminal offenses. The Domestic Violence Amendment Bill is the second one that seeks to address the gaps and anomalies which have manifested themselves since the Domestic Violence Act came into operation in 1999. The Domestic Violence Act provides women with the highest form of protection from domestic violence, placing responsibility squarely on the organs of state, particularly SABC, to ensure that survivors of domestic violence are able to apply for protection order, which can now be obtained electronically because we're in the era of 4IR. The criminal law, the last one, Amendment Bill, seeks to extend the protection afforded to victims of gender-based violence and to introduce a new offense of sexual intimidation and to extend the ambit of offense of consent. The bill seeks to further regulate the inclusion of particulars of persons in the National Register for Sex Offenders and propose, amongst others, to expand the register scope to include details of all sex offenders and not only offenders against children and persons who are mentally disabled. It increases the period for which a sex offender's particulars must remain on the register and further regulate the reporting duty of persons who are aware that sexual offenses have been committed against persons who are vulnerable, children in particular. House Chair, in his Women's Day 2021 address, the real Commander-in-Chief, President Matamela, outlined that as part of the work to provide justice and support survivors of gender-based violence, 3,500 family violence, child protection, and sexual offenses investigating officers have received specialized training to do their work. He also indicated that 12 public buildings have been renovated and repurposed to be used as shelters. And work has been done to ensure that all police stations in our country have sexual assault evidence kit. It should be noted that 97 courts are also ready for designation as sexual offences court. However, consultation is still underway with the Chief Justice on that one. The Sexual Offences Court offers a sequential and coordinated flow of victim-centric support services, which include information, private waiting room, court preparation, pre-trial emotion containment, private testifying, intermediaries, post-trial emotional containment, to name a few. We also want to employ on the victims of GBVF, not to withdraw cases against perpetrators, as this makes us look bad by supporting them from the beginning. The NPA, in collaboration with the Department of Health, has established Tutuzela as we have, and we know their issues. Now, finally, I want to challenge all these animals who sometimes masquerade as men to raise their right hand, place it on their left chest, close their eyes, and pray with me now, because this is about them. And I want them to say, Mudimu ra lawyer. Iseng ka meriana, but ka diketso tse mpe. Ra kopa o re thuse.
God, we are wishes, not using muti, but with our hearts. God give us chance to protect all the women.
Thank you very much.
24 hours a day, 365
Thank you,
days
Honorable.
a year. Thank you very much.
Ra leboga.
You don't know how many days are there in a year.
Thank you, sir.
Regalo, are you there on the platform?
Mr. Gallo.
To cope and Tate Madisha?
Thank you very much. The debate before us today has become a yearly expression of sympathy for women. This continuous expression of sympathy leads to the expected evolution of resolutions, which are seldom implemented by those who are supposed to implement them, namely the politically elected individuals or persons who were legally employed by the state to do so. Indeed, this has become a historical song. Let me refer you back to the joint sitting convened by the President on the 17th of September, 2019, in which the President Ramaphosa condemned this GBV. It was at that sitting that we all rose to both condemn and commit ourselves to stop this horrendous act. But nothing was done. And I remember it was last year that Honorable Mente proposed a debate of national public importance on this particular issue. But then again, nothing was implemented. I proposed, I remember, that the majority in this House should agree, and we all, of course, agreed, that we must create laws and enforce the existing ones to protect women from discrimination and violence, including rape, verbal abuse, mutilation, torture, trafficking. Has this been done? No, because throughout the world, South Africa is seen as #1, the country that rapes women more than any other country of the world. I propose that to help women, we must give them skills and the ability to learn and earn more money, encourage them to both participate and even lead political parties, sensitize the public, disadvantages of forced child marriages. I truly feel that we must be set, because albeit we consistently agreed that GBV kills our nation, albeit we consistently take resolutions to stop that satanic act, but those whose daily legal duty it is to actualize the stoppage of this satanic act never do so. For as long as the women's existence is left to play the second fiddle of the human existence, then their economic advancement will never be realized. I call on all of us to stop clapping hands and commit ourselves so that indeed we can be able to implement what we say we want to implement. Thank you, Chair.
Ra leboga. Honorable Hendricks.
Thank you.
There is no marital justice
for women in religious marriages, but priests, rabbis, and imams must pray for President's success when they take the oath. So the practical step Al-Jamaah is doing during Women's Month is to table a private member's bill so Parliament can comply with the judgment of the Supreme Court of Appeal to ensure marital justice for Muslim wives by November 2022. We hope honourable members will engage with this bill as Muslim wives also vote for their party. This is in August today. Another practical step was to table a motion to make amendments to the Maintenance Act using a green paper put together by women maintenance activists to capture the oppression of women by men with regard to maintenance issues. Honourable members must study this green paper and Al-Jamaah's first round thinking what amendments must be made. Management of queues at maintenance courts and settling maintenance cases within 3 months is something the Minister of Justice can ensure if he is really serious about Women's Month. Parliament must have a policy on maintenance just like it is only now putting together in place a policy on marriages. New President's first port of call is to visit the grave of Chief Albert Luthuli. Honourable members must visit the Chief Albert Luthuli Museum in Groundville, who embraced fatherhood. In this way, we can put an end to gender-based violence. Chief Albert Luthuli had a family meeting at dinner time whenever he could, where he discussed with his 7 children and his beloved wife the events of the day and what to look forward to the next day or week. His wife did not fail to edit his speeches in and out of jail for the freedom we have today, did not derail his family meetings. He set the example of fatherhood, and his 7 children became educated and served society. Even today, President Ramaphosa has family meetings. The importance of fatherhood has not been fully debated during Women's Month, as in its absence, an end to gender-based violence is a pipe dream. The chief sons had to make breakfast for their sisters and wash dishes, did the laundry and iron their sisters' clothes. That's what Mala Tuli, daughter-in-law of the chief, was going to tell us in the Women's Parliament last week. We must not think that this is European ways. It is Honourable Chair, African fatherhood. Father must care for the woman in the family. Women must chill out and relax if they so want to. Fathers today must be put on terms and regulated. That's why we have a Maintenance Act. So we call on members of Parliament to do something like Al-Jamaah is doing. We've got the private members' bill. We're making amendments to the Major Maintenance Act. What are other parties doing? Thank you very much, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Hendricks. Asibize manje umhlonishwa inkosazana kaChabalala.
Honorable Shabalala.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Members of Parliament, viewers at home. Let me introduce myself. I'm Judith Chabalala, and the one stareke ufiridovona mukororo wa chivasa na chiove mupikwana ivele vivanenda sara narazavatu. We meet here today as we close the Women's Month. Allow me to start by a person whose voice was ever present and inspiring to the freedom fighters in our townships and villages. The people's poet Mzwakhe Mbuli says, ukulimala kwengqondo, ukulimala komuntu, ukulimala komuntu, ukulimala komndeni.
The head in the community is for the nation. Allow me to speak. Yes, allow me to speak to you coward people. Why are you folding your hands? What is it that is not coming to an end?
1980s, when the group of apartheid was strangling the souls of the resistance of the youth, workers, women, Black people in general, and Africans in particular. The intersectional nature of the struggle for freedom was understood in the African National Congress. We understood that then can never be a true freedom unless the system of exploitation of working class by capitalists was abolished. We understood that even if the board of a company has a black face, thanks to the Black economic empowerment, and our children went to former white schools, the system of racial oppression will remain. We also understood that there could never be true gender equality unless the system of patriarchal was rolled back and defeated. So when the 23,000, some as young as 10 years old, fall pregnant, we must admit that the people's poet tells us we are a damaged nation. That is because we have damaged communities, broken families, ruined individuals, and engendered brains. What are we doing all about this? I want to argue this afternoon that we should debate in the House every year doomsday about gender-based violence and femicide until we do what needs to be done. What needs to be done is also known to each and every one of us sitting here in this house and also at home. We have to decisively dismantle the pillars of apartheid, colonialism, class exploitation, and structural unemployment system, racism, patriarchal oppression, apartheid settlement patterns, colonial underdevelopment of townships and rural areas, amongst others. The crime statistics presented recently by the Minister of Police revealed that women are victims of abuse within overpopulated spaces, each of which wave of the COVID-19 pandemic has its own statistics that goes congruent with the increasing number of GBV. As the elected public representatives of our people, we need to come up with programs to address these issues and thus make it possible for women and girls, regardless of their socio-economic status, to feel that they are part of a society, that their safety is guaranteed by all the structures of a democratic state. As the NDP will employ all of us that we should feel safe, all South Africans should feel safe, women remain very vulnerable on this item. Now, the challenges that faces women during the pandemic that we all know is that they were largely borne the brunt of the pandemic and has been exacerbated by the largely existing challenges such as inequality, unemployment and poverty, the gender-based violence and the lack of economic empowerment. Over 42% of households in South Africa are women-led, and women work in the hardest hit economies such as hospitality, health, retail, trade, manufacturing, including mining. The job cuts and employment insecurity in the informal sector further exacerbated the conditions of employment that women are already subjected to, such as low wages, poor working conditions, and lack of social protection prior to the lockdown. These challenges increase household poverty and worsen food security, particularly in the women-led households where a woman is the sole breadwinner. The loss of income has affected families, communities, households, and communities at large. Lack of income increases the risk of women depending on their partners, which limits a woman's power and open up avenues of gender abuse. Now, the policy on women empowerment of the African National Congress have been very clear around the 50-50 principle. We employ our also political parties on the other side of the fence to ensure that you make women to also occupy positions of strategic importance. When we do Women's Parliament on Friday, we would have seen beautiful woman who was here. Unfortunately, the race issue remained a very thorny matter because in these benches, there was nothing that had to do with that. But I also implore the African National Congress as well to work very hard to ensure that the issue of the race, it is being attended to, as women should also be represented, black and white, whether creed or their color or so forth. However, let us be frank and admit that this is not enough to transform the reality faced by millions of women. We do not have those companies to tender for public sector businesses. Now, government has made strides towards achieving gender equality, guided by the South Africans' progressive laws. We have seen more women serving in higher ranking positions than ever before. Even then, the truth is that most Black African women trapped in the grinding poverty of our township and rural life, such as opportunities are mere a pipe dream. Government has recognized that such laws as Employment Equity Act have had very limited effects on achieving equity in the workplace. As a result, government has brought an amendment to the Act to give greater powers to the state to enforce compliance. Now, the President Economic Recovery Plan would have committed itself that women should commit that SMMEs, women-owned businesses, will play a vital role in delivery of infrastructure. Women will also be encouraged and supported to form cooperatives in key economic sectors such as retail, agriculture, agro-processing, financial services, and manufacturing, and will also be prioritized to access funding. Now, let me quickly respond to the opposition parties. The dear Honorable Sheriffs, I don't know what you were saying. I didn't even capture anything. It's very disappointing. This debate is a very important debate that we should not ever be and find ourselves in a situation that we're politicking around the women's struggle. The women question, it's a very important question in our struggle. I'm highly disappointed currently, and the dear incompetency that they speak about crime and blame the Minister of Police that spends sleepless nights and trying to ensure that there is peace, to ensure that the crime stats come down in this country. You come and rhetoric here and blame the Minister of Women, the presidency. You even belittle another woman as a woman. I'm very disappointed. There's nothing that you've done. Then as Honorable Manzoni says that you are the chairperson. Chairperson of what? If you come here, you don't give solution. We need to come together as political parties and really resolve the woman question. The woman question calls on all of us to ensure that we come together. The women of Unyanga, Kailicha, here in Cape Town and Western Cape, you don't speak about the plight of those women because they too deserve to have services to be assisted with the crimes that is overpolling in Kailicha, whether it's in Nyanga. That situation is appalling, and you say where you govern right. It's very shocking. In fact, there's nothing that you would have said in this debate, including your other honorable member that speak about Tutuzela care centers. The fact that we have so many Tutuzela care centers in this country and we're enrolling them, we're rolling them out, it shows that we're dedicated to address the plight of gender-based violence. Now, the president would have said gender-based violence, it remains a pandemic. It requires all of us as a society to come together. Gender-based violence requires a family structures, families home. For you to really argue and come here and blame government for everything else, it's really unbecoming. We have to resolve our own family issues. Thank you.
Yo, such torture. You recognize Mamuini. Oh.
Thank you. Proceed. Right. Honorable Abrahams. Members on the virtual platform, ensure that your mics are off. We don't want to hear your conversations there.
Thank you, House Chairperson. My heart sinks every time we have this Women's Month debate in Parliament, because once again it highlights the pain and suffering endured by women. We are abused, raped, and murdered daily with little hope and growing fear and anxiety that one day I too will become a GBV statistic. Added to this anxiety is knowing that we're still painfully far from where we ought to be regarding our national vaccination target. This Women's Month, we learned that of the 7.2 million people in South Africa who have received at least one dose of the vaccine, 60% are women. 4.32 million women in comparison to 2.88 million men. These figures have shown us that despite all the barriers South African women face on a daily basis, they still made their way to a vaccination site. Barriers such as mobility to reach vaccination sites, restricted decision-making over their own bodies and health, taking fussy toddlers with them to go stand in the queue, making their bold decision to miss a day's work or using the few rands left to travel to a vaccine site. And while women make up a significant number of our frontline healthcare professionals, and thus were the first to receive a COVID vaccine, many included in the 60% are everyday mothers and daughters who consciously chose to protect themselves and in turn their families. Women are on the front lines not only as healthcare professionals, but as ECD teachers, cashiers, educators, domestic workers, caregivers, and social workers, daily interacting with our children, seniors, vulnerable citizens, exposing themselves daily to COVID. Women and girls still suffer disproportionately during the pandemic, especially of its secondary impact. More women will be removed from the labor market, being forced to provide care at home. This is the beginning of extreme poverty for women when they're forced to give up their livelihoods. Girls will drop out of school, worsening existing gender inequalities. On Friday, the 27th of August, the Minister of Health said that the gender gap has now narrowed to 58% of women and 42% of men who had been vaccinated. Only 2%. Is there male vaccine hesitancy? I certainly hope not. So once again, during Women's Month, we make a plea to a call for men to stand with us, help us protect each other and our families against the fight in the fight against COVID-19. Please vaccinate. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Abrahams. We now invite the Deputy Minister of Public Service and Administration to close the debate. I think your Honorable Deputy Minister on the virtual platform, Public Service and Administration.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. As we come to the close of Women's Month, continuing to observe 2021 as declared the year of Charlotte Maxeke, a pioneer and first Black South African woman to earn a university degree in 1903, we realize how high the bar was set by the women of that time in terms of approach to the struggle for liberation and freedom. Charlotte Maxeke was not only a pioneer, but also a freedom fighter. Through all the work she did, their struggles are still struggles of women of today. We must intensify the fight that these brave women started. After the male-only African National Congress was formed in 1912, she demanded and was awarded membership. This is how progressive the African National Congress has been over years, always open to new ideas that evolve with time. Thus, the 50-50% representation of men and women in the constitution of the African National Congress, never to be found in a constitution of any political party, regardless the many voices that we hear this afternoon trying to criticize the ANC-led government. Charlotte Maxeke believed and proved that women can be capable leaders. As women of South Africa, we have come a long way as we remember the names of other women who fought viciously towards emancipation of women, such as Mama Winnie Madikizela-Mandela, Albertina Sisulu, Ms. Sophia de Bruyn, the only one of the four main leaders of the 1956 march to the Union buildings. We continue to remember also Helen Joseph, Lillian Ngoyi, Rahina Musa, and Ray Alexander, and many, many others whose names are not here today mentioned. These are women on whose shoulders we are standing. These are women with rich history of participation and leadership in the struggles for liberation of women, mainly trade unions and working class movement. With society dynamic and forever changing, the challenges of women of South Africa today are different, but the status quo remains. Looking at the challenges from the perspective of the commitments South Africa has made to the United Nations Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, a declaration negotiated and signed on behalf of women of the world at the 1995
World Conference for Women, the status of women of South Africa has improved. Women can now, unlike in the past, an oppressive apartheid regime, women can now own property. Women can participate in the use and ownership of land and land resources. That's why we have women farmers, women in the mining sector. Women now have equal opportunities to men in business ownership, even if access challenges still need to be addressed. Women have broken barriers to entry into sectors and industries previously preserved for men, such as aviation, military, academia, technology, engineering, and construction. More girl children acquire high school senior certificate today than ever before. Sexual abuses and harassment in and out of school must be fought vehemently to avoid teenage pregnancies that disturbs this momentum. The rights of women are today fully protected in South Africa, but more can still be done. Understanding the principle of progressive realization of rights within the limited resources of the state. And I must repeat this meaning of progressive realization of rights, because what you hear in South Africa is, when is this going to be done? When is this going to actually be accomplished? But people forget the difficult past that we come and the past that actually destroyed the lives of women and the general population of South Africa. This cannot actually be undone over just a few years, regardless of the fact that cognizance needs to be taken of the fact that there must be also finances to manage to actually meet these demands. Our government has done so much. What is important, whether it's fairness, instead of hearing the many voices that are criticizing and saying, hurry and get it right, some of the voices who have participated in processes that actually oppressed the South Africans in the past, we need to actually begin to make an audit of what government has actually done. The lives of South Africans and the lives of South African women have indeed improved. Today, challenges for women are exacerbated by COVID-19. Research show a disproportionate impact of COVID-19 pandemic on women as people who comprise most of the frontline workers in the health sector, in education, in the police, as forerunners also in the care and responsibilities in their households. Economically, women have suffered severe economic and social impact from the lockdown imposed to curb the spread of the virus. Research also showed that women accounted for 2/3 of the total net job losses. Women are more likely than men to live in households that reported running out of food and money in April 2020 at the onset of COVID-19. In addition, the closure of schools resulted in more women than men having to take care of children and spending more hours on childcare. It is thus clear that the adverse effects of COVID-19 on women are more economic, are more and on women, and the economy, health, and education and food security are immense. Women bear the brunt of poverty in South Africa, with young women, especially African women, worse affected. Government, in partnership with other stakeholders in the country, is putting in place measures that seek to address the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide. Following the 2018 March of activists against the high levels of gender-based violence in the country and the subsequent presidential summit on ending gender-based violence and femicide, a national strategic plan was developed and launched by the President, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, in March 2020. Since then, Madam Chairperson, there have been a number of measures implemented. An interministerial committee on gender-based violence and femicide that comprise of key ministers have been established. one measure that has been put in place to really try and fight the scourge of gender-based violence. One of the responsibilities of this interministerial committee on gender-based violence and femicide has been to promote and integrate the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide into government's planning and budgeting processes. Government has allocated 21 billion rands over the next 3 years to address the issues of gender-based violence and femicide through implementing the 6 pillars of the National Strategic Plan. His Excellency President Ramaphosa also launched the Private Sector Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Fund at the end of 2020 and almost immediately Corporate pledged 128 million rands to the fund. So much has been done. Only the eyes that can see that a lot of work is being put into trying to improve the lives of the women of South Africa. A lot of work is being put into trying to fight the scourge of gender-based violence. To date, 22 national departments have submitted their monitoring and evaluation plans on the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, and they have been reporting monthly on progress to the Department of Women, Youth, and People with Disabilities. You may want to criticize the minister in this department, but what is on paper talks for itself. The processes of establishing the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide will commence once the legislation that regulates the mandate, operations, and powers and functions of the National Strategic Plan is in place. Gender-based violence and femicide rapid response teams have been launched at Alfred Nzo District Municipality in Lusikisiki.
Deputy Minister, thank you very much. Your time is up.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is the year of Charlotte Makeke, which means it is the year of the woman. Galoko City, Malibongwe.
With that we say, let it be praised. Let's not destroy the good work that is done by Parliament.
There are tags on each of our gadgets, and I have seen members sitting very close to each other in the house. Let us protect one another, because the work that Parliament has done, they made sure that we sit according to the protocols. Please, let's respect that. I know we miss each other, we want to be close to each other, but this is not the place. Thank you very much. Let us now ask the Secretary to read the second order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities on filling of vacancies for the National Youth Development Agency, NYDA Board.
Thank you very much. I will now invite the Chairperson, Honorable Ndaba, to introduce the report.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. Honorable Chief Whip and Deputy Chief Whip, honorable members. Young people are the future of this country. They are vibrant and are full of ideas. Opportunities such as education, employment, and upskilling should always be at the avail as to empower our youth for the future. Young people today are burdened with various issues such as unemployment, mental health matters, substance abuse, and access to education and skills. The National Youth Development Agency is at the center of ensuring that challenges faced by youth are addressed. Through the recommended appointments of the board, we are adamant that issues pertaining to youth will be adhered to and addressed. Section 9 of the NYDA Act stipulates that the board is comprised of 7 members 2 of whom are executive directors. Members of the board hold office for a period of 3 years and are appointed by the president on the recommendation of Parliament. The term of office for the NYDA board expired on the 31st May 2020. The establishment of the subcommittee, I will say table as read, just to save time, and go straight to public participation processes. Parliament advertised on the 20th March 2021 in various local, regional, and national newspapers, including the parliamentary website, inviting applications for persons to serve on the NYDA board. The advertisement was in line with the NYDA Act, number 54 of 2008, which provides the procedures and processes for the appointment of the board members. The deadline for applications was 9 April 2021. A total of 1,117 applications, including 1 duplicate application, were received. This brought the number of applications received to 1,116 applications. Shortlisting criteria and processes, I will say table as read in our report of the portfolio committee. According to the NYDA Act, number 54 of 2008, the board consists of 7 members, of whom are executive directors. Members must be appointed in a manner ensuring participation by youth in the nomination process, transparency, and openness. A short list of candidates for appointment is published, and the geographical spread of the public is reflected. After careful consideration of the number of CVs received, the subcommittee resolved to shortlist 40 candidates, given the large number of applications received. Shortlisting took place on the 25th and the 26th May 2021. All 40 shortlisted candidates were subjected to academic qualifications, verification, check and security clearance, and adherence to Section 10 of the NYDA Act. Positive confirmation were received from the Human Resource Unit of Parliament of the academic qualifications of all the 17 recommended candidates. In addition, all 17 candidates were found to be fit and proper to be recommended as candidates to serve on the board. Interview guidelines and process, I will say table as read in our portfolio committee report. The 17 candidates, after the candidates presented themselves and their innovative ideas of taking the NYDA and youth development forward, the subcommittee members considered recommending 14 candidates. However, we deliberated and agreed to recommend the top 17 candidates based on their performance during the interviews, skills and experience, and a demographic profile that is representative of the country. This proved to be a challenging and momentous task. The 17 candidates are thus representative of demographics and geographical spread of the Republic, espoused in Section 9, subsection 4 of the NYDA Act number 54 of 2008. The following 17 candidates may be considered for appointment by the President to serve as the board members in the NYDA for a period of 3 years. Ms. Karabo Mohale, Mr. Mulaudi Sikake, Mr. Mihlali Pedro Mzileni, Mr. Alukhona Africa Mnguni, Ms. Papa Lopo Nwani, Mr. Kutlwano Esau Rakosa, Mr. Mikalo Malan, Mr. Avelam Chachubane, Ms. Lebohang Mulaisi, Mr. Thabo Shingange, Ms. Alexandra Sira Proctor, Mr. Tulisa Ndlela, Ms. Asanda Luwaka, Ms. Busisiwe Catherine Siabe, Ms. Nomcebo Nkosi, person with a disability, Ms. Nompumelelo Mpata, Ms. Pearl Pillay. The committee further indicated that it would be ideal to have 4 females and 3 males appointed to the NYDA board. In conclusion, the portfolio committee wishes to commend the members of the subcommittee for their hard work and dedication shown through the process and acknowledge the support staff for their support. House Chairperson, we request that the House adopts the report. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I will now recognize political parties wishing to make a declaration. The opportunity to do so and the usual times for declaration of votes will apply. The DA.
Thank you, House Chairperson. This process has come a long way to where we find ourselves today. I remember just last year how the process became severely predetermined, unfair, and unconstitutional. From the moment a list of preferred candidates was issued by the ANC National Youth Task Team on the 11th of May 2020 to the Deputy Secretary General of the ANC. Shortly after that, all the names identified in that letter were amongst the top 30 shortlisted candidates. It was young people across the country who stood together and fought against the political hunger of the Youth League and its attempt to once again capture the NYDA for its graduates. It was the DA that fought against the predetermined list in the committee and in this very house. Their actions were not only cringeworthy, but they were illegal and criminal. When we began a new process, it was vital that we ensured that young people of South Africa had full confidence in the legitimacy of this process. This meant that brilliant, talented young people across South Africa needed to be given a fair process that prioritized meritocracy over political connections. That beautiful diversity that is South Africa was represented. That young, talented, qualified candidates were not overlooked. The DA believes in a fair society where our youth must be skilled, empowered, and employed based on their talents and hard work and not who they know. We truly had the most amazing young people sit before us for 3 days straight and present their ideas for the youth of South Africa. It was truly a spectacular thing to have these young people get their ideas on television for 3 days in a row. With no doubts, I can say we have innovative young people in this country with brilliant ideas. We had Ms. Alexandra Proctor, who is a young tech CEO who wants to push the country's youth into the tech world and create jobs. We had Ms. Pearl Pillay, the director of Youth Lab, who lives and breathes youth development and advocacy. We had Mr. Lukhona Mnguni, who is indeed a brilliant mind and very passionate about governance and young people of this country. All of these candidates that came before us presented their ideas, and they gave us hope as a nation that we can indeed turn things around, that the youth can turn South Africa around. If you watch those interviews, I'm sure you could see that there is still hope despite the failure of the ANC. Under no illusion that the NYDA as a cash cow for cadres for many years. This has happened to the detriment of young people. When we analyze the high levels of youth unemployment, we must be under no illusion that if cadres stopped eating 5 years ago, we might not be sitting with the highest level of youth unemployment rate in the world. The NYDA is supposed to be an entity that empowers young people with skills development and funding. It's supposed to attract the best and brightest to help us fight unemployment and chart a way forward for innovation amongst young people in this country. But instead, it has become a cadre facility. The DA has always advocated for the NYDA board to be free of political influence and patronage. The agency can no longer only exist for the benefit of ANC card-carrying members and those who are closely linked to the political elite. The task for the 7 recommended candidates is to do what no board has ever done, which is to stop political patronage in this entity. It is to hear the voices of young people when they say, if I don't have a green, black, yellow membership card, I don't get assistance from the NYDA. It is to be a self-carve brew and make sure you don't become a cater that eats at the detriment of the young people of this country. The ANC has been eating and chowing for many years. It's time that it stops. The DA would like to recognize all the contributions that have been made by young people across this country. Many youth activists, NGOs, youth organizations who reached out to the DA and wrote petitions and letters to Parliament. They are drawing the line and taking back these institutions from the corrupt ANC, from the corrupt ANC Youth League and its task team. Indeed, they remind us that Parliament is not above the people, it must work for the people. The DA supports the report. Thank you.
The EFF.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, Chair of Chairs. The EFF supports the Portfolio Committee on Women, Youth and Persons with Disability report on filling of vacancies for the National Youth Development Agency. We want to put on record, Chairperson, that we condemn this creeping tendency in Parliament of using state security agency bogus reports to try and discredit candidates in appointments to boards when it is not a requirement. This is the same state security agency that cannot gather even most basic intelligence, yet they want to peddle gossip in parliamentary processes. The committee was mandated to rerun the process to advertise, shortlist, interview, and make recommendations on the number of people who must lead the NYDA board after the initial process was abused by narrow partisan factional interest of the ruling party. The FF has consistently promoted a process to appoint the NYDA board that considered gender, race, geographical, and political spread to ensure representation of interest of all young people in South Africa. The days of the NYDA offices treated as the ANC Youth League and Young Comms League desk office must come to an end. The NYDA must be non-partisan. We don't want an NYDA that only exists in big cities. Fancy positions that do not benefit young people. Instead, we want to see a board give strategic guidance to the management of the NYDA to create an intelligent organization. We want to make it clear that we will hold accountable the people appointed to the board of the NYDA accountable. The board does not report to the CFO, does not report to the CEO of the NYDA. Those people are there to deliver on the vision and mandate of the NYDA and must take guidance from the board, not the other way around. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Yeah.
The IFP.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. The Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities began to function as a new department on the 1st April 2020. Its tasks and duties are stipulated under Section 9, Roman figure 3 of the Constitution, mandated to accelerate the socio-economic transformation and the empowerment of participation of women, youth, and people with disabilities through policy advocacy, monitoring, and evaluation. As an entity under the stewardship of the department, the National Youth Development Agency is tasked with highlighting and advocating for the issues that speak to all youth of South Africa. Its ultimate goal is the development of all South Africans young people, and not just those affiliated with the governing party. Bearing this in mind, the selection process for the NYDA board must ensure that there is a broad representation from across the spectrum. Nominations should include young people with disability, women, representatives from civil society, and multiple independent youth organizations. Only this way can the NYDA board truly promote the interest of South African young people and not just a narrow group. The IFP, therefore, was very disappointed to see that all 17 candidates that the portfolio committee had recommended for appointment by the president are representatives of the governing party. Where is the plurality of voices, the diversity of views? Who will speak up for all the issues that affect youth that are not affiliated with the governing party? We're not of the belief that the nomination process in this current format is fundamentally flawed, with the end result being yet another case of cadre deployment. We would therefore like to suggest that the nomination process be subjected to independent review and that mechanism be put in place to ensure a diversity of voices. The IFP therefore does not accept this report. Thank you.
The Freedom Front Plus.
Thank you, Chairperson. A while back, Minister Maite answered a question in which she said that the NYDA has never been
ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome aboard this airline.
Connected. The minister is mistaken because it has never been anything but an employment agency for the politically connected. The NYDA is nothing else than an ANC Youth League branch. It is just another forum for the ANC to loot and mismanage. It is just another talk shop that they can fill with their cadres kids to ensure the lap of luxury these children have become accustomed to is maintained. But back to the report and the recommended names. Just because the most controversial names were removed from the list and the list was increased by an additional 10 people does not mean that the politically connected will not once again be chosen. Furthermore, the problem with this recommendation of 17 names is that the committee has now knowingly excluded Parliament in the process to ensure that the 7 best candidates and not the 7 ANC-connected candidates become board members. The report says very nobly that by adding more names to the list, they are giving the president the option to make a good choice, and ideally they would like to see 4 females and 3 males selected from these 17 names. But the fact of the matter is that President Ramaphosa is the president of the ANC. Does the committee not remember the reason this process had to restart was because the ANC were very biased towards ANC members? Now the committee is entrusting the ANC to make an unbiased decision. Have we not learned our lesson? Voorsitter, terwyl ons oor die komitee praat.
Chairperson, I will speak about the committee. It is a shame that the first process, we've already spent more than 1 million rand so that the committee can sit, so that the board can be chosen. The whole process then had to be repeated and more money had to be used. And in the time of the pandemic, while there's no real money to be spent,
has forgotten that the NYDA only succeeds in creating abusers, criminals, and delinquents, like Andile Lungisa, a former NYDA chairperson and now also a former MMC in Nelson Mandela Bay, as he was found guilty of assault with the intent to do grievous bodily harm and has since also been suspended as a member of the ANC. If not even the ANC has no other alternative than to suspend a person, you know it's bad. The President, I have one final suggestion to make. You must be careful that history does not repeat itself. Abusers, criminals, delinquents, and political allies are not what the youth of South Africa needs. Maar ek sluit af. Die VF+ bly
conclude. The Freedom Front Plus still believes that the only solution for big-scale corruption and the fact that there is poor management and ANC cadre deployment is to get rid of them. I thank you.
The ACDP.
Honourable House Chair, the ACDP will not be making a declaration. Thank you, Chair.
The UDM. The ATM. Good. The NFP. The AIC. PAC. Al-Jama.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Honourable Chair, Al-Jama would like to encourage those that have been nominated to do their best for the country. We will stand behind them. We will do oversight, and the issues that honourable members of parliament have raised, we are confident that it will not be like that. Our advice to those on the board is to create next generation jobs, new revenue streams, embrace the fourth industrial revolution, and to take care of communities that have been neglected over the years, like the Cape Flats. In Mitchell's Plain, we have entrepreneurs dabbling with robotics and drones. And those are the kind of areas that we hope that the board will look at and provide support. Al-Jamaa supports the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The ANC.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. Greetings to the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee. Firstly, on this last day of Women's Month, allow me to pay homage to the women of 1956 who laid the foundation for women like us to walk the path. The women that understood and knew their worth and dared to take a stand against oppressive laws that hindered their path. The women that laid a foundation for women like myself to stand in platforms like this because they recognize the significance of women's voice. Today, we celebrate the struggle stalwarts such as Mam Charlotte Macega, Mam Lillian Ngoyi, and many other women that stood together to fight against gender oppression. Honorable members, this Women's Month, as we celebrate women, we also commemorate the women and children that lost their lives in the scourge of gender-based violence. We commemorate the life of Nosicelo Ntebeni, who was brutally murdered by a partner on Women's Day. A cruel reminder as women, we do not share the same freedom of safety and entire right to exist in this world. We stand with the number of young girls that have been abused during the lockdown and fallen pregnant, robbing them of their innocence and their future. Indeed, we still have a long way to go for us to achieve women equality and women emancipation. As the African National Congress, we will always be at the forefront of the emancipation of women and strive for women empowerment and an end to gender-based violence and femicide. Honorable members, kubuhlungu ukuthi njalo ngeminyaka kumele sikhuthe lo mhlolo wokubulawa kwabo.
Painful to speak about this every year. Chairperson, unemployment and job opportunities in South Africa is a real concern.
2021, and that approximately 3.4 million out of the 10.2 million of young people aged between 15 and 24 are not employed and are not in education and training. The challenges of youth unemployment in this country was further worsened by the pandemic, and which resulted to many youth-owned enterprise businesses being impacted by the pandemic. Honorable members, the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan prioritizes economic inclusions of women and youth and education and skill development. The National Youth Development Agency should continue its role in its skills development programs and its funding of youth-owned enterprises. The National Youth Development Agency should update and alter its skills program to those that are required in labor market. The NYDA should also continue to mainstream young people in various sectors of the economy, including the private sector. We have faith in all the recommended candidates of the board and hope that the appointed candidates will carry the mandate of the NYDA and consider issues faced by young people such as gender-based violence and femicide, mental health issues, substance and abuse, access to education and youth unemployment. We need an agency that will be an agent and a voice for all young people, an agency that is accessible and in touch with young people from various backgrounds despite race, gender, and class. An agency that will reach out to all young people, even those as far as the villages of Mchindini Trust in Mpumalanga. We need an agency that understands the struggles of young people. As the African National Congress, we have no doubt that all the recommended candidates are well qualified and have showcased their understanding of the NYDA and the issues pertaining young people across the country. It is for these reasons, Honorable Chairperson, that as the African National Congress, we move in support of the report. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, the question before the House is that the following 17 candidates should be recommended for appointment by the President to serve as board members in the National Youth Development Agency Board. Ms. Karabo Mogale, Mr. Mola Oli Sikake, Mr. Mishlali Pedro Mzileni, Mr. Lukona Afika Nguni, Ms. Babalo Ponoane, Mr. Kutlano Yeso Rakosa, Mr. Mikalo Malan, Mr. Avela Jajubane, Ms. Lebogang Mulaisi, Mr. Tabo Shingange, Ms. Alexandra Sarah Proctor, Mr. Tulisa Ndlela, Ms. Asanda Luwata, Ms. Busisiwe Catherine Siabe, Ms. Nomtebo Nkosi, Ms. Nompulelo Mpata, and Ms. Pearl Pillay. Are there any objections to the recommendation? Are there any objections? Yes, Honourable Member.
Kindly note the objections of the IFP. Thank you.
Objection is noted. Are there any further objections?
Yes. Honourable Chairperson, please note the objection of the Freedom Front Plus.
Objection is noted. Are there any further objections? There's no further objections. The question is therefore agreed to. The decision of the House will be conveyed to the President. The Secretary will read the third order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Communications on 2019-20 annual reports and financial statements of South African Broadcasting Corporation, South African Post Office, Universal Access Agency of South Africa, and Universal Service Access Fund.
I will now call on the Honourable Manelli to introduce the report. He's on the virtual platform. The Honourable Manelli.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair, honourable members, ministers and deputy ministers, fellow South Africans. House Chairperson, I rise to introduce this committee report on the 2019-2020 annual reports and financial statements of the SABC, SAPO, USAASA, and USAF for consideration of this House. This happens as we end the month dedicated to remembrance of women's struggles and tracking of progress made on women emancipation. The Women Parliament that convened on the 27th of August 2021 has called for men and women to work side by side in disrupting patriarchy in all its manifestations. This should be our guidance as we discharge our different responsibilities on behalf of South Africans. Honourable members, according to Section 5 of the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act, the National Assembly, through its committees, must annually assess the performance of each national department. The committee must submit an annual budgetary review and recommendations report, termed the PRRR, for the department as it falls under its oversight responsibilities for tabling in the National Assembly. This important task was carried out by this committee within the timeline set by the National Assembly. However, the SABC, USAASA, USAF, and SAPO tabled their reports only after the PRRR process. The committee met with the SABC on the 23rd of February 2021, USAASA, USAF 9 March 2021, and SAPO on 12 March 2021. Honourable House Chairperson, without presenting much detail, the committee, in making its observations, amongst others, noted an SABC with concern that only 59% of the annual performance targets were achieved, with a net loss of 511 million rands. Noted the high distribution costs charged by Centec are negatively affecting the financial viability of SABC. Also noted with great concern the weaknesses in the internal control measures in the procurement processes leading to irregular expenditure, which undermines the strides made by the board and management to improve other areas of audit concern. And as far as USAASA is concerned, noted with concern that the incapacity at USAASA and USAF has hampered the delivery on key programs like the PDM. But also noted with appreciation that the acting chairperson and the interim board members have been appointed to stabilize governance of the entity concerned. With regard to SAPO, noted with concern at the low level of performance by SAPO as reflected in the annual report, which is a reflection of the dire state of affairs at the post office. Honorable members, the overarching recommendation of the committee on SABC is the need to address the funding model in a way that clarifies the public mandate and the ability of the SABC to generate alternative income streams. This is the matter we also advance in the debate on the SABC. The capacity and governance challenges that USAASA and USAF need urgent attention in a way that helps deliver on major programs like the BDM, which is crucial in the high demand spectrum allocation process. The implementation of a turnaround strategy by SAPO and its funding model is important for its sustainability and relevance in these changing times where technology is almost everything in terms of functioning in society. I therefore, House Chairperson, present this report for the consideration of this House, and I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I will now recognize political parties wishing to make a declaration. The DA.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Evidence that a number of these entities contained in the reports are long overdue for fundamental reform, rationalization, and and restructuring to turn them around from sluggish and loss-making public companies into self-sustaining and value-adding operations. The unavoidable truth is that with declining economic growth and tax revenue forecasts for the foreseeable future, some kind of painful change will inevitably happen down the line for these entities, whether or not they want it or are ready for it. So the journey forward must be about facing and dealing with reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. The Portfolio Committee has heard repeatedly about the persistent and growing challenge of increasing competition faced by state-owned companies in their respective service markets, as has been relayed to us by the SA Post Office and the SABC. We have proposed as the DA that some kind of consortium approach in these markets will be more effective and sustainable in the long term, meaning the onboarding of private sector equity partners, as has been the discussion regarding other state-owned enterprises like SAA and ESCOM. The previous minister in the portfolio poured cold water on this idea, but I hope that Minister Njabeni will be willing to relook at and consider the value add of public-private partnerships in advancing the mandate of her portfolio, exploring and finding ways of harnessing the synergy, innovation, and efficiencies that can be tapped into through this approach. In motivating for this view, I would like to remind the Minister of the benefits derived in her previous portfolio of small business development when the Spaza Shops and General Dealer Support Scheme was rolled out as a partnership between the Small Enterprise Finance Agency and Nedbank. We need more of that kind of approach, what economists call the crowding in effect. What we do not need, Chairperson, is a foolhardy, quasi-socialist approach of trying to entrench and expand state monopolies, which will promote a crowding out effect in communications-related markets. A foremost example in this regard is the Post Office's indefensible pursuit of an enforced package delivery monopoly on items below 1 kilogram, cutting out commercial courier companies, while in the meantime, this bankrupt entity cannot operate a functional, efficient, and reliable post and parcel delivery service in the first place. This is a farcical scenario of wanting to have your cake and eat it. On one hand, securing hundreds of millions in an annual state subsidy from governments, while on the other, still pushing for an unjustified monopoly to be enforced. As my mother would say, "Yini manje lo mhlola ongitshela wona?"
What is this said by my mother?
Expression of Kaapse Afrikaans is J no just.
Are you crazy?
The SA Post Office, with its massive advantage of the biggest retail footprint in the country, cannot compete fairly and profitably in an open market where competition is intense. Perhaps it should not be there at all as currently configured. For logistics and communications markets to function as efficiently as they can, we need more competition with more players who are induced to excel and innovate, and certainly not an enforced monopoly. Thank you, Chair.
The EFF.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. As the EFF will reject this report as the highest form of dishonesty on the state of affairs of entities under this department and the causes for their financial decline. The irony of this dishonesty is that the financial condition of entities such as the SABC and the reasons given for it contradict the very performance report in terms of content output and its exposure in the broadcast and radio market. The report outlines how SABC Radio recorded a combined weekly average listenership of 37.5 million people, and how SABC's free-to-air channels, namely SABC 1, 2, and 3, amassed a viewership of 26.2 million, 24.8 million, and 20.2 million audience viewership in a typical month, respectively. Despite this, the reported revenue collected for the year under the review is purported to be 5.7 billion, which was 23% under budget. The SABC is said to have been having declining revenues for the last 5 years, and there is uncertainty by the leadership of this department to whether SABC will ever return to profitability. It is a combination of incompetence and dishonesty. Incompetence because this decline occurs while 13 out of 20 of the nation's most watched television programs belongs to the SABC, yet it declines financially. Dishonesty because the reduced revenue is accredited to broader economic challenges and not to the poor management of the SABC content. Instead of making strategic investments in broadcasting and advertising space, maximizing successful local content through exports to foreign markets and making strategic deals with pay-to-view broadcasting entities for local content, the leadership of the SABC has been at pains to rationalize the firing of workers as a way of increasing revenue. That is why the entity has lost over 511 million in 2019-2020 financial year. The parasitic relationship with the multi-choice due to ICASA's mass carry regulations, which compel the SABC to offer its 3 channels to all subscription broadcasters at no cost, has resulted in the growth of entities such as MultiChoice on the back of the SABC's successful programs and advertising space. This is while the SABC collapses. To exclude this is to lie to us, and we will not endorse that. The revenue for the South African Post Office is reported to have decreased, and one of the reasons cited is that there are emerging substitutions to traditional mail services. But this is more dishonesty, because couriers services remain a staple in South Africa. There is a decline of 187 million in courier and parcel revenue because the South African Post Office is poorly managed, does not have adequate infrastructure, and is understaffed due to retrenchments and simply unreliability. The dominant perspective in both SABC and Post Office is that retrenchments will contribute to revenue growth, is a narrow-minded and foolish and reveals a poor acumen for strategy and leadership. The EFF therefore rejects this dishonest report, which seeks to hide incompetence behind nebulous broader economic challenges. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The IFP. The IFP. The FF Plus. Is that the IFP? Can't hear you, Honourable Member. Maybe you must unmute yourself. Honourable Majosi. The FF Plus. ACDP.
Thank you, House Chair. The ACDP considers this report, which raises a number of issues of great concern, referring both to the SABC and the SA Post Office. Now, having served on the ad hoc committee on the SABC board, which concluded its report in the previous Parliament in February 2017, I'd like to just focus briefly on the SABC issues. We are clearly concerned that the report states that 59% of the targets at the SABC were not met, and that the SABC has run at a 511 million rand loss. Now, as previous speakers indicated, there are significant weaknesses in the control mechanisms which are undermining the board's attempts to improve the audit outcomes. And Chair, the ACDP is still astonished that the issue relating to the funding model has still not been addressed. The funding model is at the heart of a lot of the SABC's financial concerns. And in the previous Parliament, in that report of the ad hoc committee on the 24th of February 2017, which was accepted unanimously by that Parliament, the funding model and the funding issue was raised. And so we from the ACDP's perspective would urge that that funding model is addressed as a matter of urgency to improve the liquidity position of the SABC. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The UDM, ATM, Good, NFP.
Honourable Chairperson.
Yes, Honourable Member.
It's a thing here before you move on further. I think Honourable Majosi is in the position to contribute to this debate. Thank you. If you give her an opportunity.
Thank you, Honourable Singh. Honourable Majosi.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Our consideration of today's annual reports and financial statement for SAPC, SAPO, USAASA, and USAF come at a time when the South African economy is grappling with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the recent unrest in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. The transformation of state assets such as USAASA into state-owned enterprises was meant to promote effective and efficient service delivery in our country. Despite this noble objective, the performance and management of our SOEs have not delivered on these promises. The presence of SABC in our country, for instance, is expected to represent the different values that we hold dear as a country. However, an assessment of the performance of the SABC, as well as the previous mentioned entities, does not instill confidence. We are aware of the economic challenges introduced by the pandemic and those which especially affected SOEs in the country. The IFP therefore acknowledges the interventions by the National Treasury, among others through the Presidential Employment Stimulus Program, which provided some relief. However, despite these interventions, the IFP notes with concern the financial losses incurred by SABC, where operating losses of over 500 million were recorded. Interestingly, this entity continues to register high figures of irregular expenditure. The IFP has in the past called for the restoration of finances at the SABC, and we echo similar sentiments regarding all SOEs we are deliberating on today. Our concern is that these entities continue to underperform. SAPO, for example, reported a deficit on its monthly financial obligation. The entity has already depleted its funds to pay existing debts, and this is unacceptable. It is our hope that these entities improve their performance, minimize irregular expenditure, and steer their finances better so as to achieve their performance targets. The IFP supports the recommendation from the Parliamentary Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Cope, PAC, Al-Jama.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Honourable Chair, we don't have a quarrel with the report. However, we wanted some signals that the post office will add some more value. As you know, Honourable Chair, we're having problems with timetables for elections because of messaging and voting. And we saw the success of postal voting in America very recently. And I would have imagined that the country would have been given some indication of whether the post office is moving in the direction of postal votes, which will be essential as the pandemic will be around for the next decade. And postal votes is certainly one way in which we can have free and fair elections. But otherwise, we don't have a quarrel with the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The ANC.
Honourable House Chair, honourable members, the National Development Plan sets out in order to address challenges of poverty and inequality, a state is needed that is capable of playing a transformative and developmental role. This requires well-run and effectively coordinated state institutions staffed by skilled public servants who are committed to the public good and capable of delivering consistently high-quality service for all South Africans while prioritizing the nation's development objectives. Honourable members, in order for us to fully realize this vision, the National Assembly and its committees are empowered by the Constitution of the country to carry out rigorous entity oversight that will ultimately lead us to the capable state and development path we envisage. Today, the committee has tabled the 2019-2020 annual reports and financial statements of the South African Broadcasting Corporation, the South African Post Office, the Universal Access Agency of South Africa, and the Universal Service Access Fund. We are mindful of the fact that the aforementioned entities experienced numerous challenges in the period under review. However, we remain optimistic about their turnaround strategies. The ANC believes that our SOEs are critical to the economy of South Africa. They are vehicles that ideally should build critical economic infrastructure and increase economic growth. The SABC is one of the key institutional pillars of our democracy, delivering essential content to millions of South Africans on multiple platforms. For the period under review, the SABC managed to achieve 59% of the set targets. Unfortunately, the SABC also encountered operating losses and negative cash flows on operations for the financial reporting period. The financial instability in the organization propelled for a turnaround strategy, which left many people retrenched. Honourable members, the period under review has put more impetus on the SABC to implement strategies that will make its content relevant and commercially viable. One of the pillars of the reconstruction and development plan is revitalization of the SOEs, such as the SABC, to contribute to the creation of greater employment opportunities for our people, particularly the youth and women. We are pleased that 3.2 billion recapitalization funding from the shareholder has brought about stability in the entity with a net current asset position of 1.8 billion. The SABC received a qualified audit opinion due to irregular expenditure. This is unacceptable. considering that the board and executive management had promised to address these matters in previous meetings of the committees. Nevertheless, the ANC welcomes the improvement on audit results. Out of 127 findings for 2018-2019, 85% were resolved by the reporting period. The outstanding findings relate mainly to policy and procedure reviews that were still in process of being implemented. The ANC is disappointed that the South African Post Office only managed to meet 35% of its targets. This is not a positive outcome as it means that the entity was only able to achieve 6 of its 17 KPIs. This is owing to a number of issues, but one of the major issues that impact on the finances of the Post Office is the demerger with Post Bank. Post Bank profit of 544 million reduced SAPO's net loss position in previous year. Therefore, SAPO's loss, excluding Post Bank for 2019, amounted to 1.6 billion. The decision to demerge SAPO and Post Bank has the potential to cripple the South African Post Office. SAPO plays a strategic role in provision of essential goods and services. Its operation impact on quality, accessibility, and affordability of service provided to the community, particularly the poor and the vulnerable. Therefore, the ANC welcomes its resolve of engaging in partnership to grow its current revenue streams. USAASA and USAF achieved 50% of their targets in the reporting period. In the period under review, indications were that there has been over 100% increase in terms of broadband size that needed to be maintained by USAASA. However, there has not been any increase in the budget or human resource capacity in order to enable the agency to deliver on its legislated functional national policy mandates. This creates a mismatch in performance areas and the budget. One of the reasons for underachievement for USAF was the revision of the BDM service delivery model, which resulted in the delayed installation of set-top boxes in the Free State, Northwest, and the Northern Cape. The ANC knows that the BDM project is official off the ground, and great effort is applied to ensure that we yield to the call of the president and achieve total switch off by 2022. We urge these entities to resolve and conclude on the unresolved court cases and investigation. As I conclude, the entities under review are confronted with a number of challenges, compounded by the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on the operation of the sector. The ANC government is committed to leading these entities to recover and stability so that they are to provide the much needed service to our people and create jobs. The ANC support this report. Ndoribu.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognize the Honourable the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the last order of the day.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Communications on 2020-21 second quarter performance and expenditure report of Department of Communications and Digital Technologies.
I will now call upon the Honourable Manelli to introduce the report from the virtual platform.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair, Honourable Members, Ministers and Deputy Ministers, fellow South Africans. This being the year to celebrate the life of Mama Charlotte Maxeke and the end of the August month, let me appreciate the leadership role of women in different areas of responsibility. This department in particular has been led by women, even in the recent changes in the executive. That task of ensuring universal access to connectivity and the transformation of the digital economy has once again been assigned to a capable woman. This indeed goes a long way in disrupting patriarchy and its stereotypes. As Chairperson, the committee considered the 2020-2021 second quarter performance and expenditure report of the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, DCDT, and its entities in a virtual meeting on the 2nd March 2021. This report gives an overview of the presentation made by the department to the committee, focusing mainly on its achievements, outputs in respect of the performance indicators, targets set for 2021 financial year, and related financial performance. The report also provides committee's key deliberations and recommendations in relation to the performance presentation that was done by the department and its entities. Honorable members, the department realized significant achievements in this quarter, having achieved 34, which represents 81% of the 42 APP targets, of which 8%, which represents 19%, were not achieved and reasons shared with the committee. Honorable House Chair, once again, without getting into the detail of the observations and recommendations as tabled in the report, allow me to make a few highlights as we observed with regard to the department, that we noted with appreciation the presentation made and commended the department for an improved report in its quarterly performance. Noted with concern that the department did not achieve 8 of its 42 targets, which included the development of the DCDT organizational structure. Noted with concern that not all 970 sites in the SA Connect program were connected due to theft and vandalism, as well as technical challenges. Also noted with concern that the challenges in the South African Post Office are not conducive for the Post Office to deliver services to the people as expected. The committee applauded stability in Centec and commended its good performance, even though other targets are not met. We commended SITA on its performance and revenue improvement as a result of the administrative caretaker appointment, given the history of SITA and its performance as it relates to the departments as its immediate clients. Whilst noting challenges in SABC, NEMISA and FPB, in FPB, this is in particular to critical vacancies. However, note that good performance in ICASA and .ZETNA was really commended by the committee. Honorable members, the committee, amongst others, recommended that the minister should ensure that processes are in place to stabilize all entities as they operate at different levels. That all issues raised by the Auditor General are fully addressed, especially the going concern in some of the entities like the SAPO, and that consequence management is implemented in the department and across all entities. And that the committee receives updates on the reconfiguration process in order to have proper oversight that was promised to the country is implemented.
Thank you, Honorable
And
Chair.
therefore present this report for the consideration of the House. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Manene. I will now recognize political parties wishing to make a declaration. The DA.
Mangibonge futhi sale ngaphambili.
Thank you again, Chairperson.
Reflected several organizational shortcomings that reflected failures to get the basics right concerning to get the basics right concerning ensuring adequate systems, capacity and resourcing in various areas. The department did not achieve 8 of its 42 planned quarterly targets, and the following areas of underachievements highlighted precisely this need to fix the fundamentals. Firstly, the service delivery model of the organizational structure was not approved due to resource constraints. Secondly, not all vacancies were filled, incapacitating the 4IR PMO. The business case for the State Digital Services Company Bill was not submitted for approval as planned due to limited resources with regards to legal drafting of the bill. And finally, slow spending in the departments was due to vacancies not being filled. And at the end of September 2020, there were still 29 vacant positions in the departments, including that of the DG post. Chair, we understand that there is now a new minister as executive authority, and we will give her the benefits of the doubt to turn things around. But we expect to see swift action that hones in with laser focus on the topmost imperatives for operational effectiveness, as well as to clear out any and all deadwood. This is and should primarily be a policy department, with no business attempting to create state-owned companies that would be directly involved in infrastructure operation or service delivery, especially in telecommunications. It must focus on its core unique assets, and the only agenda that should occupy the minds of its management and officials is one centered on this question. How do we facilitate and promote investments and innovation in telecommunications and digital technologies that will contribute to skills development, job creation, and economic development? The top management of the department should be in frequent contact with and on a first name basis with the top management of all tech companies in the country, as well as the chief technology officers of all key corporates across all sectors to facilitate problem solving and innovation promotion. Accordingly, it is appropriate to put front and center the department's Program 3 ICT policy developments and research. The purpose of this program is to develop ICT policies and legislation that support the development of an ICT sector that creates favorable conditions for growth and investments. We thus call on Minister Ntshabeni to make the optimal effectiveness and success of this program her topmost and non-negotiable objective to achieve during her tenure, despite any and all resource constraints or other challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. EFF.
Thank you, Chairperson. The EFF outrightly rejects this report. The department is presiding over a collapse, rather the department is presiding over collapsing entities, and there is still no plan in place, nor is there political will to salvage key institutions of the state, upon which millions of people depend for access to information. The Portfolio Committee has been used to rubber stamp the nonsensical management of these institutions and is content with making stale recommendations that no one takes seriously at this department and in the entities that report to it. In this report, the committee recommends, for instance, that as far as the entities that report to the SABC are concerned, there must be processes in place to stabilize all entities, that entities remain accountable and comply to legislation, policies, and regulations, that all critical vacancies are filled urgently in the department and its entities. Processes are in place to address all issues identified by the Auditor General. The committee has been making the recommendations each time this department and their entities have come to Parliament every single year for the past 7 years. No one takes these recommendations seriously because they all know that there is no consequence management at these institutions. The department is mandated to make ICT technologies available to all South Africans, particularly those on the margins of economic activity. There are currently no plans to ensure that the internet access is made available to rural areas and in townships to enable the youth to partake in the economic opportunities that access to the internet may unlock. ICASA has been struggling with rolling out spectrum for the past 5 years, and there are no consequences for this flagrant disregard for issues of national importance. Chairperson, without the SABC, millions of people would not have access to information. It is important that the SABC is salvaged and that its integrity is maintained. To do this, we need we need no interference with editorial decisions of the SABC. We know that we are going to local government elections, and we know that in the past, the ruling party has given illegal instructions to the SABC not to cover news that would portray the ruling party in a negative manner. It is because of these interferences that the SABC loses credibility. The collapse of South African Post Office is an unforgivable offense against the people of this country. It is at the post office that most job seekers send their applications for jobs. It is at the post office that millions of rural people do even their basic banking. The leeches in power have allowed the post office to collapse, and South Africans must never forgive those who are responsible. We reject this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. IFP.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. The Department of Communication is a critical one, mandated to create a vibrant ICT sector for all South Africans. It is to ensure that South Africa can join the world in terms of access to a robust, reliable, affordable, and a secure ICT environment. The IFP notes that certain of the department's entities are not performing optimally and are failing to meet their mandates effectively. It is worrying that the department failed to achieve 8 of its 42 planned quarterly targets. Further, the general trend of poor compliance across entities, as well as the apparent inability to account for non-compliance, is cause for concern for their future and for the people they serve. We are heading towards the end of 2021, and ICASA has yet to resolve its issues to release spectrum. The challenges in this regard must be overcome with agents. With regard to SAPO, the IFP is pleased with the appointment of the Chief Executive Officer and trusts that she will be given the support she needs to implement much needed reform at the entity. The net loss of 429 million for the second quarter, together with the increase to 1.3 billion in loss for their year to date, is unacceptably high. This mismanagement is directly affecting SAPO's ability to pay creditors to suppliers, pay rent at some location, and work on an effective turnaround strategy. The IFP believes a new funding model is needed for the SABC to effectively manage its affairs. However, it must be one that does not involve more bailouts from Treasury. Thus, the SABC must explore and present information on new and effective revenue collection strategies. The National Task Team must make recommendations regarding the governance model for the SABC as a true public broadcasting service. The IFP urges the Minister to engage seriously with the entities to ensure that necessary processes are in place to stabilize them and to push for accountability, compliance, and visible consequences management, together with the institution of penalties for non-compliance. The filling of critical vacancies, both at the department and the entities, is necessary for effective functioning. The IFP is also concerned that there seems to be a lack approach regarding the implementation of recommendations by the Office of the Auditor General. This must change swiftly. Finally, the department must endure to provide Parliament with the relevant information on time to allow for proper oversight to take place. This is not the case at the moment. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. F plus to follow. FF plus. ACDP.
Thank you, House Chair. The ACDP will support this report and we leave it at that. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. UDM. ATM. Wood. NFP. AIC. Al-Jamaa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, we need to relook at the policy with regard to internet access and with regard to providing data. And I hope that the ANC, the person...
Asizwa lutho, Chairperson.
Al-Jamaa. Al-Jamaa, please come closer to the speaker. Honorable Hanif.
Okay, I am closer to the speaker, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, let me rather move it this way. Is that better, Honorable Chair?
Give him a chance, honorable members.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, we need to get clarification on the policy with regard to internet access and with regard to provision of data, because this comes up.
Audible at all.
Al-Jamaa. Thank you, Honorable Hanif. Sorry, we're not audible enough.
Honorable Chair, Honorable House Chairperson.
Honorable Deputy Chief Whip.
May you please give him another chance, please? Thank you. Because we didn't hear what he was saying.
I will accede to that. I don't think there will be any other objection on that. Honorable Hanif, are you done? Are you done?
No, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I get clarification on...
Chairperson, we cannot hear him at all.
Honorable Hanif,
the volume is
audible. Next time, Honorable Hanif. I will move to the ANC. Sorry about that.
Oh, thank you. Honorable House Chair, fellow South Africans, we gathered here today on the last day of the month we commemorate as Women's Month in South Africa. It is in this month that we take a moment to reflect on the courageous act of Women's Month of 1956, who took a stand against past laws that were imposed by the apartheid regime on people of color. It is with great regret that in recent years, women have a fight for their right to life, the right to belong, the right to equality. Gender-based violence and femicide has become our reality and propels us to keep asking ourselves, am I next? Day in, day out, women are killed, victimized, abused by men who claim to love them. Honorable Chairperson, we stand here today in deep pain as we mourn the passing of Nosicelo Mtebeni, law student of Fort Hare University, who was brutally murdered in the middle of Women's Month. We would like to extend our heartfelt condolences to her family, friends, and the entire Fort Hare University learners and community. ECTT second quarter performance. The Department of Communications and Digital Technology is committed to its mandate to South Africa digital transformation to achieve digital inclusion and economic growth by creating an enabling policy and regulatory environment. The committee has tabled the department second quarter performance and expenditure report of 1st July 2020 to 30 September 2020. This is the time when the world was still trying to coexist with the COVID-19 virus and mitigate against its impact on our public service and the economy. Challenging as it has been to carry out certain functions during this pandemic, the department was able to achieve 34 of its planned targets, which culminated in 81% achievement. Some of the non-achievement can be attributed to the following: inability to fill certain vacancies on time, the tabling of annual reports of all departments and SOEs was postponed by the National Treasury by 2 months, delays in finalization service level agreements, among others. On the second quarter budget and expenditure, as at the end of second quarter, the department spent 1.3 billion or 40.1% of the total budget. Spending at the end of the second quarter was 234.8 million or 15.1% lower than projected. The slow spending was due to the vacancies not yet filled due to the lockdown, as well as salary adjustment, performance awards and pay progression not yet implemented. At the end of September 2020, there were 29 vacant positions in the department, including the Director General post. Honorable members, underspending in the department remains a concern, particularly in programs such as Program 5, ICT infrastructure support, whose core mandate is to promote investment in robust, reliable, secure, and affordable ICT infrastructure that supports the provision of a multiplicity of applications and services. And Program 6, ICT Information Society and Capacity Development, which aims to develop and implement strategies to build capabilities to bridge the digital divide. These programs underspent by 45.4% and 21.8% respectively. The recommendation in the African National Congress supports the recommendation of the Portfolio Committee with a particular focus on and ensuring that there is a stability and progress in all our entities so they better serve our people. Central to this is ensuring that we track the implementation of the reconfiguration process, and the process towards the merger of entities is expected. BDM and SA Connects projects are realized as they are closely linked to the economic recovery plan. The program to roll out broadband to schools, hospitals, police stations, and other government facilities must be fast-tracked in order to bridge the digital divide as well as improve on service delivery imperatives. The department pays special attention to SAPO. Our post office is a key stakeholder in delivering our government developmental objectives. It is able to bring basic service to remote, rural, as well as urban and peri-urban areas. Over 8 million SASA beneficiaries depend on it monthly. 4,000 schools in Limpopo and Northern Cape rely on SAPO for the delivery of school books. 1.2 million DTT qualifying beneficiaries rely on the services of post office. It is in this light that the ANC will continue to work with SAPO to find sustainable ways in which the entity can return to a healthy financial position so that our people continue to benefit from their services. In conclusion, House Chair, for us to actively deal with the social ills that exist in our society, we are going to need all citizens to commit to making South Africa great. Let us all dedicate ourselves to create safe spaces for women and children in our communities. And importantly, government needs to garner all its efforts and resources to ensure that it unites all the people of South Africans for the complete liberation of the country from all forms of discrimination and national and gender oppression.
Thank you very
The
much.
ANC remains committed to transform of South Africa into a united, non-racial, non-sexist and democratic country based on the principle of Freedom Charter.
Thank you very much, Honorable
The
Member.
ANC supports the report. Thank you.
I now recognize the Honorable, the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections. Report agreed to. That concludes the business for the day, honorable members. The House is adjourned.
Thank you.